Hey, welcome back. Let's go ahead and work on section 2.3. Okay, so 2.3, whoops, we're going to visualize categorical data. So 2.1.2.2 helped us with visualizing and summarizing numerical data. 2.3.2.4 are going to help us with visualizing and summarizing categorical. So right now we're going to talk about visualizing categorical. We're going to look at two ways to visualize categorical. And then in 2.4, you'll talk about how we summarize it. This is going to be nice and quick. And again, 2.3 and 2.4 run together. So you do not have to worry about any specific questions 2.3 style, but it's going to be a combination of 2.3 and 2.4 kind of questions. And those questions will be 32 through 42 that use section 2.3 and 2.4. So let's go ahead and start talking about this, and then we'll get going. Okay. So right here, I have 11 entries on that question that I asked you. It said chapter 1 survey. So every now and then I'm going to pull information from that. And so I decided to pull this information because this is very much categorical. And it's about the toilet paper. Do you like the toilet paper to come over the top of the roll, or do you like the toilet paper to dispense itself underneath the roll? Okay. So this is our data, and we had 9 that said over the top and 2 that said under. That's their preference. Okay. So we're going to use this as we kind of go through and talk about some things. All right. But before we take this data that's categorical and display it, let's talk about those different types of displays that we're going to work with. And again, like I said, there are 2. So the first one is a bar graph. Okay. Bar graph is different from a histogram graph. Okay. But we generally use bar graphs when it comes to categorical data. And basically, a bar graph, it displays a frequency bar for each observed category. Okay? Displays a frequency bar for each observed category. So, what that means, and some other things that I have under here, yeah. So the bars will have gaps between them. Okay, I'll talk about that last guy. Probably shouldn't have shown all that, but that's fine. The bars will have gaps between them. They do not have to touch. Okay, they can if you want them to, but it's not necessarily. And the reason why they're gaps is because there's really no overlap because you're dealing with categories. What's the overlap for over the top and underneath the toilet underneath the toilet roll? There really is no overlap. There's no reason for them to touch. Just like if I had categories of colors, why would my red bar have to touch a green bar? Okay, that doesn't make any sense. There's no overlap. So, like in the histograms, there could be overlap there because basically your x-axis is like a your x-axis is like a number line. So that makes sense why those bars touch because one bar bleeds into the other. But in a bar graph, it doesn't really make sense for them to touch because they're categories. Now, the other thing is you do not have to worry about the width of the bar. Okay, so you can make one bar really, really fat and another bar really, really skinny. It doesn't matter. Okay, because all these bars really represent is how many times did this result happen, hence frequency. Okay, so you don't really have to worry about the width, but in general, we do keep the widths relatively the same. Okay, it's just weird looking at a bar graph with a huge width for one category and a small width for another. That's just weird. Why would you want to do that? Okay, now there is a special kind of bar graph called a I call it a Pareto chart. Okay, and it is a bar graph where all we do is we sort the bars from the most frequent on the left to the least frequent on the right. So my bars start at the highest bar and it works its way down. Okay. That's called a Pareto chart. Okay. So Yeah, that's just a specialized kind of bar graph from the most frequent on the left to the least frequent on the right. But you don't have to make it in that order. You can keep your bars in any order. And that's kind of cool thing about it too, is that when we look at the bar graph for the toilet paper, I could have my bar be on top first and then my bar be underneath second. Or I could flip that. I could have my bar for the underneath first and the bar for the top second. It doesn't really matter which bar goes where because all those bars represent, again, is just frequency. Okay? So let me show you some pictures. So right here, this is a regular bar graph. This is a Perot bar graph because you can see it's from the most frequent on down. Okay, and this one, again, they put graduate, junior, senior, sophomore, unknown. They could have rearranged these any way they wanted. Okay, they could have had them in this format: unknown, first year student, sophomore, junior, senior, graduate. They could have put them in that order. It doesn't really matter. But you can see that these bar graphs are really about how many times it occurred, their frequency. Okay, so right here, it happened one time for a graduate. Juniors said 4 times, so the bar goes up to 4. What you're looking at right over here, this is the relative frequency, same relative frequency that we talked about in histograms. Okay, so again, to find relative frequency for graduates, it says it's about 0.05. That's because they took 1 divided by 20. Okay, and if you go to your calculator, take 1 divided by 20, that gives you 0.05. Remember, this is like the percentages, but these are percentages as decimals. So 5% of graduates in this survey, went with students in or 5% of the statistics class, because these are students in the statistics class, is made up of graduate students. Okay, so that's all. Remember, relative frequency it's just like a proportion, or in other words, like a percentage of how much the class is being made up of here. So you can either do it as frequency or you can do it as the relative frequency. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So that's one way, and that's the most common way you will see categorical data. Now there is another one. Okay, so I actually said StatCrunch time right now. So I've opened up StatCrunch, and you already know how to put data in. So I went ahead and did that. I took variable 1, I titled it toilet paper, and then I put in my 9 T's and my 2 U's for 11 total. And I can go over here to graph, and we're going to do bar plot. Okay, with data, because that's what we have here. Don't worry about with summary. You want it with data. So you hit with data, select the toilet paper, and again, you got lots of options here. You can split bars, stack bars, separate graph from each group. Again, I normally just keep it the way it is. I can do frequency, relative frequency. Okay. So if we just keep everything the way it is, there it is. And this makes sense because up here it's up at 9. This one's down at 2, toilet paper, frequencies. And again, you can always go back and edit. If I did relative frequencies, it would look like this. So there's my relative frequency. So if I divided 2 by 11, this is actually about 18% or 0.18. See, hey, there you can see it is right there. The 0.18, 18, because it keeps repeating. And then this guy is about 82% or 0.82 because it's 0.818181 repeating. Okay? So, yeah, there's your relative frequencies. All right? So lots of cool things you can do. And again, I can get rid of this. Just remember, just because you hit the X doesn't mean that it's gone. Remember, it just went right over here to StatCrunch, and we were just hiding it. So if I wanted to see it again, just click on it. Oh, look, there it is. Yay. Okay? So there's our toilet paper information as a bar chart. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and put it back as the relative or the frequency. All right. So there you go. Coming back to our piece here. So the other type of graph is a pie chart. Okay, you've all seen pie graphs. Okay, pie graph, it's a display of a circle, or excuse me, a display of a circle is divided into sectors and each represent a portion of the whole. Okay, I don't think I have anything under here. Okay, so yeah, I do. So those pieces that are the portions, they are proportional to the relative frequencies. Okay, so what that means is that we know that T a couple seconds ago was taking up about 82% of my data, and U was taking up 18% of my data. So when we put this in a pie chart, this sector that's out here, the biggest, represents 82% of the circle. This part right here, that's my little slice right here, that would represent 18% of the circle. That's what this means. They are proportional. Those sectors, those pieces, are proportional to the relative frequencies. Okay? This is 82% of my circle. This is 18% of my circle. Okay? That's what that means. So, here again, example of that statistic class data. So remember that the graduates were 0.05, or in other words, that's 5%. So this little wedge right here is 5% of the actual circle. Okay, that's what that means. And sometimes in pie charts, they actually do put the percentages in here so that you know, oh, graduate makes up 5%, and then so on and so forth. Okay, some things about pie charts. Generally, for statistics and in scientific settings, we don't usually use them. They're not too common. Okay, but it is a way to display categorical data. But again, for statisticians or in statistics or in scientific settings, most of the time we don't use the pie chart. Okay. So stat crunch time. Let's do this. Here we go. Jumping into stat crunch. So I can go over here, take our data we got, go to graph. There's pie chart right below it. Okay. And again, in pie chart, we want to use with data. Don't worry about with summary. So if I go with data, I select my toilet paper. Again, you can do options. You can display the count or the total percent. Like I said, they usually display percentages. So you can turn that on or off, or you can just display the count. I believe the count would represent the frequency. You can tell it how to order it and different things like that. Okay. So if I hit count, let's take a look at that. Yeah, so right over here, there's the frequency. A little key for you right here. Top was 9, under was 2. And again, this right here represents 82% of the circle. This guy right in here represents 18%. And if you hover over it, again, you can see the counts there. If we go in and change it to the percentages, there's the percentages. So right over here, they give you the actual percents. And again, you can hover over it, see it out here. There's that 82% I was talking about. And then there's that 18% that I was talking about. Okay. So those are the two displays that we use for categorical data. I don't think I have anything after that. Nope. So in 2.4, we'll talk about how we summarize this data, and then we can start looking at some of the problems that you're going to run into for the homework. So that right there, bar graphs, pie charts are how we display categorical data. Have fun.